Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with us. My name is Ray. I'm one of the pastors here. And if you're visiting with us today, we're so glad to have you here with us this morning. Most of us are going through football withdrawals at this point, right? No more football on Sundays. So what do we do on Sunday afternoon? My family, what we used to do was we used to watch a show called America's Funniest Home Videos. And the reason I watch that show is because ever since I was little, I love watching people fall down and slip and trip. I just love that. And just the other day, my daughter, I gave her a banana to eat, and she ate the banana, and she had the banana peel, and she said, I told her, put that in the garbage. And she said, no, you do it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. You do it. And we argued. She wouldn't listen to me. Disobedient little girl. She's 2. But so finally, she's put the banana peel down on the floor. And I kid you not, cannot believe this happened. Like a minute later, she was running and she literally slipped on a banana peel. And I was laughing so hard, I couldn't even breathe. I was laughing so hard, I had to take like in my inhaler for asthma. That's how hard I was laughing. She was just crying bloody murder. My wife came out and said, what is going on? And I couldn't even explain to her how funny the situation was. So anyways, my family doesn't enjoy watching people fall and slip. My kids don't think that's funny at all. So we've switched to watch YouTube, and you got to be careful. There's crazy stuff on there, but we love YouTube. There's a bunch of channels we subscribe to, and we all have our favorite channels, right? So of course, my favorite channel is the sports channel. They show highlights of the best dunks and touchdowns, goals from around the world, and I can watch that for days, hours. My wife, she watches something, I keep forgetting her name. She watches a channel by a girl named Lindsay Sterling. Has anyone ever heard of her, Lindsay Sterling? Okay, good. Good for you. You shouldn't. But she is this violin player. She plays the violin, right? But she doesn't just play. She dances as well while she's playing. And then she like acts out like these movie scenes of some sort. I don't quite understand it, but like one time she's like dancing and she's dressed like a pirate on a pirate ship. Another time she's like a hobbit and she's surrounded by elves. And then one time she's like James. Anyway, it's really weird. She loves it and she watches that. My daughter, very easy. Cats, laughing cat, dancing cats, purring cat, any kind of cat my daughter just loves. The problem we have is my son. Because he's not a problem, this is a problem, is what I'm trying to say. My son watches this channel, and it's what it is, it's this guy who has these robot toys like Transformers, like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. And then what he does is he describes the toys for like 30 minutes. So it's the most boring channel ever. And it's really weird to me because this is not like a cute little kid doing it, slurring his words, saying funny things. This is like a grown-up man, like an adult, like in his 40s or 50s, I don't know. And he has hundreds of toys, and then he takes them out and he says in like the most monotone voice you could imagine, look at this paint on the toy, it's really good quality. His hands open up and down. If you press this button, it moves. And it's just weird to me. It's just a weird thing. And if you collect toys and you have them, God loves you. Maybe we can talk and you explain to me, I can understand, but I just don't understand it. But here's the problem, is that my son loves this guy. He even knows his name, Michael something. And from his point of view, I can see that Elijah wants to be a robot maker when he grows up. He makes his own little videos just like this guy does. And it's weird because to me, this guy is not like the example of what I want Elijah hero to be. And but think about it from his point of view, Elijah 7, this is a grown-up man who has hundreds of toys he plays with all day, and we have to assume he lives with his mom still, right? So from Elijah's point of view, why wouldn't this be the life? He thinks this is the goal. You go to school, you go to college, you get your degrees so you can live at home, have hundreds of toys and play with them. And I'm like, no, Elijah, that's a bad goal. That is very bad. If you're 45 living at home playing with toys, then God hasn't answered my prayers. So that is not what I want you doing. Do not. And so then I've been on a mission these last 2 months of introducing to him some real heroes. And I started with Russell Wilson. I explained to him how cool he was. We shot video clips, and I got him a little jersey, and he loves Russell Wilson. Then I went to Tim Tebow, of course, Florida Gator. then Michael Jordan, and then I thought maybe I should give him some like real heroes. Not that sports aren't heroes, but just like people who've done something of significance, right? So, we celebrated in January Dr. Martin Luther King's The Holiday. So I used the opportunity to explain to him. He loved it on his day off. I'm teaching him all this stuff. And I showed him clips of some of his speeches. I explained to him why what he did was so important, how it changed the world. Then we had President's Day this year. I used that as a chance to talk to him about Abraham Lincoln. He's not just a guy with a cool hat. He's actually did a bunch of amazing things as president, some of my other presidents that I enjoy. And then, I've gone to Mother Teresa and all these other people. Then we went to the Bible, and I've explained to him some of the heroes in the Bible and why they're heroic, what they did. And, during these last 2 months, here's what I've kind of summarized it like this. Here's what I've concluded, that here's what I've noticed, that the people that we see as heroes, the people that we admire, the people who inspire us, the people whose books we read, their biographies, the people we tell our children about, the people who we are just, they move us, they're heroes. It's not because they maintain their ideal weight into their 40s, right? I mean, that's good, but that doesn't inspire us, right? It's not because they got out of debt. It's not this story that they were in debt and then they got out of it. I mean, that's good, that doesn't really inspire us. And it's not because they have the biggest house on the block or they have the biggest collection of toys, whether they're robot toys or other toys, right? That's good, that's great, it's important for a lot of us, but that really does inspire us, right? We're not gonna be telling our great-grandkids about Michael who collects Optimus Prime toys, right? The people who really inspire us and move us, those people, they're heroes because they make the world a better place. And some of the heroes that make the world a better place, like they literally change the world, like some of the people I mentioned. But then other people, they're heroes, and maybe they're not household names, but they made somebody's world a better place, and that's why they're heroes. So as we've been looking in the Bible now this last couple months at these heroes, we've noticed that these heroes, they make the world a better place, or they made somebody's world a better place. And here's what we believe at our church, that every single one of you, all of us, you have the potential, you have the capacity, and then we believe that God's called you to make the world a better place, to make somebody's world a better place. So to do that, I'm going to go to the story of a guy named Nehemiah. He's in the Bible. The Bible, they're very creative in the books, in the titles of the books. So the book is called Nehemiah. So if you have a Bible, I would love for you to open up with me. If not, there's a handout. You can follow along with the PowerPoint. And I'm going to give you a little background on Nehemiah. He's a hero that inspires us, we admire. And here's kind of what's happening. We've been talking about Judges and how the people of Israel would fall far from God. They would do bad things. They would do evil in the sight of God, worship other gods, other idols, and then they would have disaster follow them. They'd be in distress. So they would call out and God would rescue them. And then they would disobey, and then they would be in disaster, and they would call out, and God would rescue them. Over and over and over, we see that God just rescues the people. Well, it finally got to the point where these Israelites were so far away from God, so committed to doing evil, that they just ignored all the prophets, they ignored God's voice, and eventually they're conquered. Babylon comes around 605 BC, and he conquers Jerusalem. He conquers and destroys the city, and he captures the city. He gets all those Jews who are there, and he exiles them. He scatters them throughout the empire. That's what the Babylonians would do. We know some of these exiles, like Daniel, the 3 young men who are thrown into the fire. Those are some of the stories of the exiles, right? So these Jews are in exile for 70 years. And for 70 years, the city of Jerusalem, the people of Israel, it basically shuts down. There's no temple worship. There's no city walls. There's no sense of identity or unity. They're just scattered. And during those 7 years, other people kind of move in. Well, 70 years go by, and now the Babylonians have been conquered by the Persians, and there's another king named King Cyrus the Great. And he says, hey, why are there Jews scattered everywhere? We don't want that. So he makes an edict. If you're Jewish and you want to go back home, go. You have my blessing, my permission. Go back home. So that begins a major migration of all the Jews who are scattered everywhere coming back to Jerusalem. So first it starts with 1,000, then 10,000, eventually 100,000. Hundreds of thousands of Jews are coming back to Jerusalem, and they all want to rebuild the city. But it's tough. It's a lot of challenges they face. They don't have the best and the brightest anymore. They were taken away. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have an economy. They have to restart from scratch, probably lots of debt. So it's going to be very challenging. And that's where we find Nehemiah. He's actually working for another king named King Artaxerxes. And I'm actually going to read the whole first chapter, and I never do that, but I'm going to do it today because I feel like it sets us up for looking at what this hero is like. So Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 11, and I'll just read as we go through. So, these are the memoirs of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in the late autumn, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign. And this is important because this is history. This isn't make-believe. It's not once upon a time or in a galaxy far, far away. This actually happened, and we have a record of it. So, Nehemiah, this is his journal, I was at the fortress of Susa. And Susa is kind of like the capital. They don't really have capitals, but it's the primary city of the Persian Empire. So that's where the castle's at. That's where the king lives. It's their major city, Susa. So Hananiah, one of my brothers, came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah. I asked them about the Jews who had returned from captivity and how things were going in Jerusalem. So remember, thousands of Jews are coming back, and Nehemiah wants an update. How are things going? Are we a nation again? Do we have a sense of identity? Is the temple up and running? Tell me the good news. How are things going? But there isn't good news. They said to me, things are not going well. For those who return to the province of Judah, they are in great trouble and disgrace. So Nehemiah, it's going bad. It's going horrible. It's not a good situation. And then he gets into details. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down and the gates have been destroyed by fire. Basically, he's saying we don't have a defense. We're surrounded by enemies. We have a lot of difficulty now. The temple is not rebuilt. The walls are not rebuilt. Things are going really bad. And we're sure that he probably gives them more details. And Nehemiah, as he's hearing this bad news, something happens. Something breaks inside of Nehemiah. And here's what happens. These next words are so powerful. When I heard this, I sat down and wept. Something broke. This wasn't just bad news for Nehemiah. This wasn't just a bad news on the channel, but he changes the channel or he scrolls down to the sports section. And it wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to send a check and fix it. It's going to be okay. No, something snapped inside of Nehemiah. And even though things were going great for him, he had a great job, a cushy life. He worked for the king. He knew where all his meals were coming from. His family was taken care of. In fact, he was raising his family in the most powerful, influential, probably affluent city in the world. Even though that was the case for Nehemiah, something inside of him broke. His heart was broken. In fact, it wasn't just for one day. Look what it says. In fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. Nehemiah was a wreck. For days he couldn't function. He was haunted. Some of you've had similar experiences, right? You've looked around and you've seen something. You've heard news. You've read a book. You've experienced something. And something broke inside of you. You saw the world that shouldn't be that way. You saw things that shouldn't happen. You saw injustice that just, something inside of you just broke. So what do you do with a broken heart? What does Nehemiah do with this broken heart? Well, he prays to God. He goes to God and we have his prayer. And here's what he says. He says, "O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of unfailing love with those who love him and obey his commands. Listen to my prayer. Look down and see me praying day and night for your people, Israel." And then he does something interesting. He chooses to confess. And here's what he says. He says, I confess that we have sinned against you. Yes, even my own family and I have sinned. We have sinned terribly by not obeying the commands, decrees, and regulations that you gave us through your servant Moses. Basically, he's saying, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not judging. The implication is that we deserve this. We've been far from you. We did evil in your sight. We were far away from you. We broke the agreement. You made a covenant with us, and you've upheld your end. You've provided and protected us, but we haven't been faithful. But he says, please remember what you told your servant Moses. And now he's going to quote God to God. And here's what God had said to Moses. If you are unfaithful to me, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands and live by them, then even if you're exiled to the ends of the earth, I will bring you back to the place I have chosen for my name to be honored. And that is like literally what has happened. They were disobedient. They left God and they were scattered, but they came back and God brought them back to Israel. And then Nehemiah says, the people you rescued by your great power and strong hands are your servants. He's saying, God, you've rescued us in the past when we were slaves in Egypt and we were oppressed and the situation seemed hopeless. You rescued us, and God, would you be willing to rescue us again? Oh Lord, please hear my prayers. Listen to the prayers of those of us who delight in honoring you. And then he's going to ask for something specific. He's going to ask God for a specific prayer request. And because he's about to act on his broken heart, he feels compelled to. He can't ignore it any longer. So he says, please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me. Now, here is what Nehemiah is about to do. And remember, Nehemiah has it made. He has a great job. He's living the life. He lives in the palace. He has everything he could ever want, everything he could ever need. In fact, he's in daily contact with the most powerful person on planet Earth in that moment. And he's going to go to this guy, the king, and say, King, I need an indefinite leave of absence. I'm going to leave this great environment you created. I'm going to leave the palace. I'm going to leave Susa. I'm going to leave my family, and I'm going to go to Jerusalem to help my people rebuild the city. And if we know anything about that time, that ancient culture, is that you didn't approach the king. That's the story of Esther. If you approach the king, you could be killed. You could be sent to a dungeon for the rest of your life. The king was all powerful. This was a huge risk for Nehemiah. But Nehemiah's heart was broken, and he felt compelled to act, to do something. So he risked everything. And even if the king said yes, then Nehemiah would have to make a huge sacrifice. He would have to leave his comfort, his stability, everything that he has, and go to Jerusalem to work at something that seemed hopeless. But Nehemiah's heart was broken, and he felt compelled to act on his broken heart. And that's why I love the way this chapter ends. Here's the last words. It says this: in those days, I was the king's cupbearer. I'll get back to that in a second. So here's the question I have for you, the question I have for all of us, all the services, all of our church. Here's a question, and I don't expect you to have an answer today, but it's something I think we should process and pray about. And I warn you now, it's a disturbing question. It's an uncomfortable question. It's a dangerous question. Here's what the question is. What breaks your heart? What is the thing that breaks your heart? When you look around your family, when you look around our community, when you look around the city, when you look around our state, when you look around our country, when you look around our world, when you look around the healthcare, maybe you look around the state of our nation, maybe you look at the economy. But what is it that breaks your heart? When you look around, what's the thing that captures your emotion? What breaks your heart? In other words, when you just let your mind go off and you're not focused on anything, you just let it go, what's the thing that you can't ignore, that keeps coming back, that you try to change the channel, you try not to ignore it, but for some reason, some way, it keeps coming back over and over, and it's kind of like haunting you even. Like, what's the thing that breaks your heart? The thing that makes you uncomfortable? That's disturbing, that in fact you try not to think about it. And then when it does come up, you say the same things we all say. We say, God, it's always been that way. It's never going to change. What can I do? The world's broken and it's going to be broken until you come back. Like, what difference can one person really make? And then you start making excuses. We all make excuses. God, what can I do? I'm a nobody. I don't have enough resources. I don't know anybody who could help. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm too busy. I'm too middle class. You know, what can one person really do? What's that thing that breaks your heart? That when you look around, you say, man, that shouldn't be that way. What breaks your heart? See, that's the questions that heroes ask before they become heroes. That's the question that precedes heroship. And there's an old Latin proverb that says this: what man is a man who does not leave the world a better place? Or I would say, what woman is a woman who does not leave the world a better place? See, when you look around and you see things that shouldn't be in this world, and you think this world would be a better place if blank. See, I feel God's calling us to make this world a better place, to make somebody's world a better place. So what breaks your heart? I think you should know the answer to that question. You might not know today, you might already know, but the reason I think we should know that is because if you've made a decision to follow Jesus, if you have put your faith in him and God, then you have to ask this question. Because if you're following Jesus, then guess what? He has a plan for you. You're not an accident. There's a purpose. There's a design. God wasn't flippant in creating you. There's something he's calling you to do. There's a mission for your life. And if you're following Jesus, then you have to, in some level, be involved in making the world a better place. In fact, put it this way: it's impossible to follow Jesus and not make this world a better place. Make your family a better place. Make your workplace a better place. That's what Jesus followers do. They make the world a better place. See, everywhere Jesus went, he made the world a better place. People were better off because Jesus was there. I mean, women, children, orphans, the sick, the poor, the rich. I mean, you name it. Everyone was blessed. The world was a better place wherever Jesus went. And his followers have been following suit ever since. They're the ones going around the world and they're building hospitals and clinics and shelters and schools and orphanages. And I mean, you look at the history of our world, these major movements that made the world a better place, at the core of them, the civil rights movement, the abolition movement, at the very center, you're going to find a bunch of Jesus followers. You're going to find people whose heart were broken and they felt compelled to act on that broken heart. And here's what we have to realize: that Nehemiah's heart, it was broken by divine design. That means that what broke his heart, that thing that broke him, that made him useless for days, God put that there. That wasn't an accident. That was part of God's master plan. He had done the same thing in same thing in the heart of a guy named Ezra and another guy named Zerubbabel. God had used this. God had a master plan to rebuild the city, and Nehemiah was a part of that plan. But here's the thing: Nehemiah had no idea what hung in the balance on his decision to act on his broken heart. And the truth is, the same thing is true for you. You have no idea what hangs in the balance on your decision to act on that broken heart. And I'll take it a step further. You have no idea what, and you have no idea who hangs in the balance on your decision to act on whatever it is that breaks your heart. See, for a lot of us, the impact that we're going to have in the future, you're not even aware of how much God is going to use it. You have no idea how great your impact is going to be for this world. You can't even imagine it. But the only way we're going to experience it is if we ask the question, what breaks our heart? And then we act on it. We take a step of faith. You do something risky like Nehemiah. Here, let me give you an example. 30 years ago, a young man, a young woman looked around the whole United States, and there were studies done, and they said, okay, in the whole United States, what area of the country has the most people farthest from God, the least people going to church, the most people who don't know that God loves them and has plans for them? And it was the Northwest. It was here in this area. And that broke his heart. It broke his heart to think that there were a whole generation, millions and millions of people here who didn't know God loves them, who were lonely, who were in pain, whose families were in pain and fragmented. And that broke his heart. So Tim and Jackie, our pastors here, Pastor Tim and Pastor Jackie, they felt compelled to move, so they moved and they came here. And here's the thing, 30 years later, Washington Cathedral is here. But Tim and Jackie, they had no idea what hung in the balance on their decision to act on whatever it was that broke their heart. They had no idea who hung in the balance to act on their broken heart. See, and for all of us, I think that's true. I feel like you need to hear this. There's a lot at stake for you, for your future. Maybe it's your generation, maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your grandkids that don't even exist yet or are there. But your decision to act on whatever it is that breaks your heart, whatever it is that captures your emotions, that's going to have a huge impact. And that's why I love the way Nehemiah ends this chapter. He says, I was cupbearer to the king. This was the opportunity I had. He wasn't rich. He didn't have access to armies. We don't know, he didn't have much power. This is all he was. He was just a cupbearer. But he used whatever he was. He used what he had. He used all of that to address whatever it was that broke his heart. And because he did that, if you read the rest of the story, he plays a pivotal part in rebuilding the wall and giving Israel a sense of identity and nationhood. He's a hero because he made somebody's world a better place. And the truth is, you have that same capacity. You could make this world a better place. And I know you can make somebody's world a better place. All you have to do is answer that question. Is to go to God and say, God, what is it? Can you clarify for me? What's the one thing that breaks my heart? Because most likely, whatever it is that breaks your heart, God put it there. It's divine design. It's God's interaction, or it's divine intervention. It's God coming down and saying, I put that there. And that's the story of most of the heroes in the Bible. Moses, Jeremiah, Nehemiah in the New Testament, all those heroes, God did something in them. And the same thing is going to be true for you. So, what breaks your heart? My wife and I, we've been wrestling with that question for the last couple years. For our whole lives, we've been praying for that, trying to figure out what it is that breaks our hearts. We've thought about it, and for most of you, if you know me, if you've ever hung out with me, you know it's a very clear answer, right? What breaks our heart are children at risk around the world, right? My wife and I, that's where we met. We met studying at Fuller, and we were both studying children at risk, missions. And it's funny, like the one class I took with her was Children at Risk. That was the title of the class, Children at Risk. And from high school, college, grad school, ever, I only got one B, and it was in that class. And Elise got an A. And I was like, the one thing she holds over me, and I can never go back and fix it. I'm smarter than her, but she doesn't believe me. Anyways, that's not what's important. What's important was that we fell in love there because we both had the same passions. We both felt like this is what God wants us to do. This is who we are. This is what we're meant to do. And going down to Honduras and being a part of Together for Transformation and the school down in Honduras, AFE, has just been like a dream come true for us. We've loved to be able to see that grow and develop. And you heard last week that we were able to raise $500,000 for all these projects around the world. And God is going to continue to do that. And we just love that. Man, as I was down there, I've been doing work for a lot of different organizations. And one of the organizations that I did work for, I evaluated some of their projects and helped them bring about change. Afterwards, they sent me a letter, and it was an email. And it was a nice email, and basically they were thanking me, and they were saying all these nice things about me. Like they were just listing, all complimenting over and over. So I thought, I'm going to email this to Elise, right? So if she reads the email and she can see all the nice things they said about me, she might respond. Anyways, I'm just being honest. We're in church. Can't lie. But at the end of that email, they had asked me a question. They said, Ray, would you be open to a conversation about coming to work with us? And they're far away. They're in Texas, and just open to conversation, right? So I emailed that to my wife, and a couple days later, she said, Ray, do you want to talk about that email? And I said, yeah, let's talk about the email. Are you talking about the nice things they said about me? I kind of memorized them, so I was pointing them out. And she said, no, let's talk about the end of it when they ask you to be open to, taking over this organization. Their guy's retiring. And I said, Elise, no way. Are you crazy? We live in Disney World up here. Like, we're 10 minutes from our church. We're 5 minutes away from our school. Elijah's about to get into a gifted program. Things are going great. My mom is up here now. My sister's family, Ben and Becca's here. Pastor Tim and Jackie. We have free babysitters for life. You can't put a price on something that good. Things are going great. I work at a dream job. We're able to do both these things. And no, this is not something God has for us. Let's not even talk about it. But I asked, okay, so what do you think? What was your thoughts? And she was quiet. And I waited and asked her again, Elise, what do you think? And I had looked over at her, and she had headphones on, and she was watching Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. She wasn't even paying attention to anything I was talking. So I'm like, forget her. We're just going to not even worry about it. Well, that was 2 years ago. And that same summer, something happened to me. And I was up here sharing with you a couple of years ago that Elijah got hurt down there. He had blood everywhere. We had to rush him to the ER. And it was a very emotional and a moving experience for us and our family. And Elijah turned out to be completely fine. But afterwards, we were walking around, and I saw all these children in this community who didn't have fathers, who didn't have mothers, who were vulnerable, at risk, and facing a hopeless future unless something miraculous happens. And I've never heard the audible voice of God, but I just knew then, when I looked around, I felt God was saying, Ray, these kids here, they don't have a father like Elijah has. They don't have a mother like Elijah has, or the network of support that Elijah has. When they get hurt, they don't have someone who's going to come and run after them. But I love these children. I knew God was saying, I'm their heavenly Father. I know how many hairs are on their head. I love them. I care for them. And I felt God was saying, Ray, would you love them and care for them on my behalf? Would you, your family, would you guys do this? So I came back, and it was so clear that's what God wanted from us. And I talked to Pastor Tim, and I told them, okay, I said first to God, I said, God, I'll be open to having a conversation. Here's what I'll do. I'll talk to my mentors, and they're going to say, Ray, this is crazy. This is not God. Stick here. I talked to Pastor Tim. I talked to my pastor in Florida, Mike, and Johnny, who's down in Honduras. And they all said the same thing. They said, Ray, this is God. This is the thing that breaks your heart. We're going to support you if you go. So I told God, okay, God, I'm going to be open to a conversation with them. So I had one conversation, and that led to another, and to another, and to another. And throughout the last 2 years, God's just sent affirmation after affirmation that this is what God's calling our family to do. And it's hard, and it doesn't make sense to me, because why? This is difficult. Things are so good here. Why would God want me to do that now? And then I read a book, and something clicked when I read that book. And here's what the quote is. I'm just going to read it to you. It said, for most of us, our failure to obey is rooted in our failure to embrace that heaven is for later. It's not for now. See, I'm making decisions because I like my life here. Things are great here. I am in Disney World. But the thing is, I'm eternal. I'm not going to live 80, 100, 120 years. I'm going to live forever. You're going to live forever. We're eternal. Do you remember 3 years ago, I used this illustration. I brought it back. Imagine this rope. It's all the way going down to the end of the building here. Imagine this rope goes on forever, and it goes across the street, and it goes to Lake Washington, and then it goes across the Pacific, and it goes around to all the way around the world, and it goes forever. That represents your life, my life. Because God didn't create you for just 100 years, 120 years. He created you forever, for eternal. You're going to live forever. And that's hard for many of us, me especially, to kind of comprehend. My finite mind can't understand eternity. And if that's true, then this little red here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a red little duct tape there. See, that represents my life and your life. This represents the 100 years we have on earth, 120. I'm healthy, let's say 150. This represents my 150 years I have on earth, and I'm making decisions because I want to enjoy these 150 years. I want to be in Disney World here. And what God is saying is, Ray, I'm asking you, I'm calling you, I've made you for more. Would you make decisions based on eternity, on this rope that goes on forever? And I knew when I read that quote that this is what God was calling our family to do. That even though it is difficult and it's tough, because I love this place and I love everything about it, God's asking us to live for eternity, to realize that this world is not our home. That there is a greater glory coming, something bigger, something better, and it's going to be up in heaven. And that's real. But it's hard because we don't see and it seems so far away. So because of that, I thought, okay, I'll talk to some people, and how am I going to tell my son? My son's he's 7 now. Elijah loves his family here, loves being around his cousins and parents and uncles, grandparents I meant to say. And okay, so I'm going to have this conversation. I told him, just like I told you, I said, Elijah, God, Abraham had to leave, and it was hard, but it was worth it because you make a difference for the world. That's what heroes do. And usually I can get Elijah on my side just like this. If I want pizza that night, I'll get him on my team. If I want dessert, it's easy to manipulate him. But I didn't want to manipulate him with something this big, so I didn't. And then he was just stoic as I was talking. He wasn't happy and he wasn't sad, and he was asking hard questions like, how far away is it? Is it as far away as Honduras? And I said, not that far, but it's still pretty far. You got to take an airplane. Well, are they coming with us? And I was like, no, they can't come with us. Why not? Well, it's a long story. And I'm trying to explain to him, but he's not really responding. So I kind of panicked, and I thought, man, how am I going to, if he makes this hard, this is already hard enough as it is. If he starts making this hard, it's going to be even worse. So I panicked, and I said, the first thing that came to mind, and I said, well, when we move, the good news is that you can get a dog, you can get a puppy. And of course, he was so happy. If you know me, I don't like dogs. I don't like animals. I'm the opposite of Pastor Tim. I don't like his dog. And now I have to get a dog now. But anyways, I'm just telling you that because I feel like this has not been an easy process. It's bittersweet. I'm excited because this is what God has in store for us. But it's just hard because following God, it's hard, but it's always worth it. And in the moment, it seems impossible. So I'm just going to read this part here. This is not something we were pursuing, nor did it make sense to us along the way. I love my family here. I love my Washington Cathedral family, and that hasn't changed. However, we're confident that God's assignment for our family has changed. He's calling us to serve children at risk. And I can't begin to tell you what this church, what Tim, what the leadership here, what the people who attend here have meant to me and my family. I'll never be able to adequately express how grateful I am for the privilege to participate in this church and to lead in this church. I feel like 10 years ago, the church saw something in me that no one else did, and I didn't see in myself either. And I'm so grateful for that. The church has nurtured me. It's supported me. It's loved me. It's challenged me. I feel like I've learned to lead here. I feel like I've learned to preach here. I feel the skills that I'm going to be using, hopefully, to make a difference around the world for children at risk. I think I learned those skills here. My 2 kids were born here. Washington Cathedral will always be a part of us, and we hope to be a part of it in some way. And I know maybe you guys don't want me to be a part of it. You're out of luck. I'm married into the family. I'm stuck here. You can't get rid of me that easy. But this world is not our home, and there's a greater hope coming. And that hope is not for now, it's for later. So the way we've been putting it is that we're not leaving, but we are going in obedience to what God's calling us to do. And this has been hard for us, and it comes with all sorts of questions. It's not happening now. It's going to happen closer in the summer, and we're going to... there's a role that I'll be playing here. Like I mentioned, we built Together for Transformation to what it is today, and I still want to be a part of that as well. But the truth is, for me and for you, we only get one life to live. And if we only get one life and one opportunity to do something that's going to make a difference, I want to do that. And I feel like if God created me and designed me and programmed me so that I can make a difference for children around the world, then I want to do it with the best I can. I don't want to do a mediocre job of it. I want to focus all of my efforts on it. And I feel like that's what God's calling my family to do. So if I were to answer the question, what breaks my heart? It's very clear now. And I feel like that's the question we all have to wrestle with. I don't think God's calling any of you to do what I'm doing, but he is calling you to do something. So what about you? What breaks your heart? What's the thing you can't get rid of? What's the thing that keeps reverberating, echoing deep inside? Because God put that there. And you're not going to experience whatever it is God has for you until you wrestle with that question, what breaks your heart? And if you do that, then you're going to make this world a better place. You're going to make somebody's world a better place. I'm going to close in a word of prayer. Pastor Tim's going to come up and have some closing words in response to some of the changes coming up. So just let me pray. Father, thank you so much for this book of Nehemiah and this incredible example of a guy whose heart was broken, and he didn't just feel compassion, he decided to act compassionately. And I thank you for you, God, that when you looked down at us and you looked at us and we were broken and hurt and lonely and in pain and need of help, you didn't just feel compassion on us. You sent your one and only Son. You acted compassionately. And I pray that as we wrestle with this question, what breaks our hearts, that over the next few days, weeks, you would just clarify that. You will bring clarity in that area so that we know without a doubt what it is you've designed us to do. And then give us the courage to act on whatever it is that breaks our hearts. I thank you for what you're doing. Thank you. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen and amen. Pastor Tim.